takes 90 hours with someone to really feel like they're a friend of yours. And I thought that was cool because I'm like, I think in the formula of friendship, it does take time, but so you can peel back the layers of who you are as a person, and you gain each other's trust and you start to reveal certain things to each other. So if 90 hours is the benchmark, like I'm just hitting 1 hour with a lot of people. And then every touch point I have with them afterwards, whether they invite me to an event or I pass them on the street, it's just adding time towards that 90 hours.
No whining.
No quitting.
Overcome.
Community. Teamwork.
Tough Mudder.
Tougher together.
No excuses. Hey, to all my Mudder family, my OCR brothers and sisters, and to you listening to this podcast right now. You know, you're my peeps too. We do share a world. And I am your mirror man and host of Tough Mudder's No Excuses podcast, Sean Corvelle. In this episode of No Excuses, we are re-releasing an episode we published in December of 2021. It was a good feeling holiday episode where I had a conversation with a gentleman named Rob Lawless. On November 11, 2015, Rob began a project to meet 10,000 people he had never met before, and he was actually going to spend an hour talking to each one. At the time of our interview, he was just over 4,700 people. And he was being featured all over on medias. He was actually interviewed by like these popular talk show hosts like Ryan Seacrest and Kelly Clarkson. I recently ran into Rob at our Poconos event. It was really cool seeing him. He updated me on the project. He was up to like 5,205 people now. And he said he was making a livable salary through speaking engagements with companies like KPMG and Shell. Really cool. It occurred to me we only released the episode on our audio platforms, and I want to now do a special re-release with the video version on Tough Mudder's YouTube channel. I love this episode because it was all about making a positive connection with people and sharing a world. This is very much a part of what that Mudder mentality is about. Now, Rob's website is robs10kfriends.com, and his Instagram is @robs10kfriends. And please like and subscribe to our No Excuses podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can give us feedback on any of our Tough Mudder's social media platforms and Tough Mudder's No Excuses Facebook page, where I also post inspiring motivational moments from our events. And you can always reach me too. You can get in touch with me through my social media. Go to my website, seancorvelle.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. Again, just type in Sean Corvelle, and you can let me know what you love, don't love, what you want to see more of. I'm always happy to hear from you guys. Enjoy this episode, yeah. I'm telling you, it was very uplifting. It was perfect for the holidays. I'm so happy to be re-releasing it, and now you get to see it on video. So, here's Rob Lawless on No Excuses. Hey out there, all my Mudder family, my OCR brothers and sisters, and to you hearing my voice, seeing our face right now. I'm Sean Corvelle, the host of Tough Mudder's No Excuses podcast and your mirror man. And usually when I'm talking to you guys and I come in like this, I've already had a little bit of conversation of the person that I will be talking to today. And it's kind of like been that exactly already. And I'm speaking with Rob Lawless. Real quick before I move on, Rob's website is robs10kfriends.com, and his Instagram, which is friggin' awesome, is @robs10kfriends. I'm speaking with Rob today because Rob's doing this really cool thing. I don't even know if I can call it a really cool thing. It's what we all should be doing in life, where, and he'll explain this more as I get to you, Rob, of, he's meeting people out there. I guess it was a project at first to meet 10,000 people, strangers, didn't even know. Just call them up, however you get in touch with them, or they get in touch with him, meet them, talk to them for an hour, I believe, have a nice conversation, and just connect. So to me, this is a perfect holiday conversation. Everyone should be talking to Rob during the holidays, just to get your spirits up and that positive influx of energy. So with all that being said, I got to shut up, Rob. Go ahead, Rob. How you doing, man? Say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Sean. Good to talk to you, man. It's a pleasure to be here. And we were just talking about it a little bit before, but you don't know this, but the last time I saw you was September 11th at the New Jersey event. And you did your beginning speech, and and we can get into it, but I'm starting to get into public speaking about my project. And you're an incredible speaker. And
that's very kind. Thank you.
Yeah, when you did your like pre-pump up speech, I turned to my friends and I was like, I need to be able to speak like that guy. So hopefully I'll be learning from you today too. But yeah, it's good to be here, man. It's cool to talk to you. I feel like I'm talking to a celebrity right now.
Oh, dude, you're too kind. That's very nice of you. This is a mutual admiration on this end too, because the more I find out about you and all that, it's like you're just one of those gifts. I know it just sounds like, I'm sorry, everybody listening, it's going to sound a little corny and all that stuff. But to me, you're just one of those gifts to humanity. One of those things that I try to say out there at the events where that there's a part of us all that what you're doing, what you display, how you live, that's in us all. And hopefully people can find that in themselves through their connection with you. So now, with that, there's so much, and you blew me away too. I didn't even know you did Tough Mudders, man.
Yeah. I've done 3 Tough Mudders so far. So that was the most recent one. I think I did one in 2012 was the first time, then 2013, and then I had a little break and just came back into it. I've trained for 0 Tough Mudders, but I've done 3.
Oh, you're the perfect mudder then.
Yeah.
You don't have to train. People always they get a little intimidated. For people that don't know what a Tough Mudder is, it's an obstacle course that's 10 miles. Now we're doing 15K, 10K, and 5K, I believe. That's the new courses. But you're out there on this mud course. There's 20 some odd obstacles, and you're really just out there to find your best. We do have some competition ones, but it's really about coming out there, being your best, finding your best, exercising those survival skills, I always say. And a lot of people get intimidated. They're like, oh, I got to get in shape before I go and do this. And I always love to tell the story that one of the first teams I ever met, because I started working for them in 2011. So you doing it in 2012, man, that's early on. You're like an original out there. And one of the first teams I met was this Navy SEAL team who came out there, and they had their rucks full of like wine and beer and bacon and all. And they walked the whole course, did this obstacle, didn't do that, spent most of the time helping people. And at the end of it, I saw them like 9 hours later coming into the finish line, just muddy, laughing, drunk. It just had a good time. So I tell people, don't feel like you have to be, an uber athlete to do this. This is about just coming out there and being human pretty much. So let me ask you then, how was your experience with it?
It was good. I did it the first time with fraternity brothers, I think. So I went to Penn State University. I was in a fraternity there amongst other involvement things, but I'm still very close with those guys. And it was like some of us juniors were doing it with some of the senior guys. And then we did it with a bigger group the next year. But yeah, I think it was the second time. My friend Steve, we were like, all right, everyone, like, be careful, blah, blah, blah. And like, I think you talk about being careful. And he rolled his ankle in like the first 100 yards. But he did the whole thing. And he completed it. And then at the end, it looked like he had a baseball on the side of his ankle.
Oh, goodness.
So, but he did it. And I like the camaraderie. And I think that I saw that back then, and I saw that this time, like where you're helping these total strangers over these obstacles. And in that moment, it's no longer like, this is a stranger to me. It's like, this is a person who needs to get over this wall. And I have an arm that I can offer, and I'm going to help pull them up. And I think you guys preach that in a big way. So that's been really cool. And a lot of the reason I enjoy doing Tough Mudders is one of the reasons I enjoy doing this project. It makes me feel like a kid again. Like the the obstacles are my favorite part. The running is not so much my favorite part, but I like doing it because it pushes you, makes you get back in shape a little bit. But yeah, climbing over the walls and going under the things, and it just makes me feel like I'm running through the woods, like in my hometown, and I really enjoy that. And doing this project has been like one big adventure of, like, I never knew that I was going to be chatting on the Tough Mudder podcast when I started this, but here we are, because one thing led to another, and then people make introductions, and you end up in this space that you never could have thought of.
Well, one, I've seen some of the interviews that you've had and some of the shows you've been featured on, on television with very popular names that we've known. And so you've just, I guess, touched a chord in a lot of us, and I'm glad that people are having you out there, especially on popular TV shows and things like that. Two, but some of the best moments to me of Tough Mudder is actually in between the obstacles when you're walking and you're talking to people you didn't know before and you're hearing their stories, which to me is exactly what your project is about. So it's a great segue to you. Tell us about your project. How did it come to be? What is it? And just explain to the people that are not familiar with it.
Yeah, so I run a project called Rob's 10K Friends, and it's my mission to spend 1 hour one-on-one with 10,000 different people. I started it in November of 2015. This was, I guess, 2 years after I graduated from college. So I went to Penn State. I studied finance. I minored in accounting and entrepreneurship. And so I had the fraternity. I was a tour guide for prospective students. I built houses with Habitat for Humanity. And I was part of a philanthropy effort. It's called Penn State Dance Marathon. And every year we raise money for the fight against pediatric cancer. And awesome thing, like when I was there, I think we raised like $13 million every year when I was there. And it culminates in this 46-hour, no sitting, no sleeping dance marathon. And I say dance in quotes because it's really just, you're spending all that time. But the idea is you're taking on the pain of the kids with cancer, and they get to go and have a weekend forgetting that they have cancer. So all of those things were really important to me as a student. And then I graduate, I start doing consulting. I have like this expense budget going around to different cities in the US. I spent time in Kentucky, New York City, Jersey City, Philadelphia, but I'm kind of confined within the walls of this cubicle. And where I used to be running into friends all the time at Penn State, now I'm formatting PowerPoint slides and I'm overwhelmed with emails and I'm taking notes on calls, and it just going from such a place of impact to where I felt like I was doing tedious tasks. That for me was a hard transition. And I understand those tasks have to be done. And when you're new to a company, you work your way up the ladder. But the entrepreneurial side of me was like, why don't you try your own thing? Try your own thing. Eventually, I left Deloitte to go to a tech startup. They had 24 million in funding. I was like the 80th employee there. And when I got to that place, I moved out of my parents' house into the city of Philadelphia. So I'm originally from like 40 minutes outside. I moved into Philly, and it felt like a new campus to me. I felt like, okay, this is Penn State all over again, and you can just go and create the relationships the same way you did in school. And I've been thinking of this concept to meet 10,000 people because I thought it would be a fun journey to go on. And once I was there, I was like, all right, we're doing it. We're doing an hour with each person. At the time, I thought it was going to take me 4 years to complete. I severely underestimated how long it was going to take because it's been over 6 years and I'm less than halfway through. But yeah, I started meeting people, and I started an Instagram account. So I would sit with each person one-on-one for an hour, and there's no agenda to the conversation. It's just, we're just here to get to know each other. I want to know who they are. I want them to know who I am. So the next time we pass each other as friends as opposed to strangers. And I've had that happen several times throughout my life. And to date, and there's a lot to the story that we can get into, but I think the most recent person I met was like number 4,710 or 4,709. So, or 11. Yeah. So 4,700 people. Yeah.
So the number you're at now is 4,700 and something.
And something. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that one, dude, that's pretty awesome, man. That's great. Is this like you as a kid? Because I like to ask people anyway that I'm talking to, start off like when, like little Rob, what was life like for little Rob when he grew up, where he grew up? Did you always have this, what we call this altruistic spirit?
I think I was always a people person, and that theme has stayed with me through life. Because sometimes people will ask me, they'll say, oh, were you very shy as a kid and like you wanted to break out of your shell and expand your comfort zone? Was this your way of doing that? And in fact, it's the opposite, where I knew I loved meeting people, and I was always like the nice guy in high school, so never burned bridges with people. always placed value in relationships, and I saw that as a strength in myself and something I wanted to further develop. So I kind of dove into that. But me as a kid, I'm the youngest of 3 siblings. I am 30. I'll be 31 next month. I have a brother who's 32 and a sister who's 36. Grew up in a Catholic family, like went to Catholic school all the way up through high school. In grade school, played soccer, basketball, ran track and field. In high school, I did soccer and then golf for 2 years. But I was in student council. I was part of the National Honor Society Community Service Corps. I started working at Chick-fil-A when I was 14 years old as a cashier. So I started very young in the working world. And then when I was 16, I started doing secretary work for a local financial advisor. And that was cool, seeing like a smaller company led by one person doing really well. That kind of helped pique my interest in entrepreneurship. But that's who I was. And I grew up in the suburbs of Philly, like in a neighborhood where a lot of the kids from my street went to the same school. So playing basketball in the driveway or football in the backyard. And I'm very lucky. Like my parents are still together. They just celebrated 44 years together. They are both still healthy, alive. Yeah. And I have a lot of gratitude for that upbringing now that I think I could have missed had I not taken the time to learn other people's stories. But I grew up in a very stable, like non-traumatic upbringing. And I think it's worth recognizing that allowed me to have the trust to go out and meet people, to meet strangers. So I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful for what it's allowed me to do.
Yeah. Now, see, what I love about this, what I'm hearing from you too, is I feel like, me personally, I feel like, people say, like if you're an artist, you need to suffer for your art. That's great for your art. And then also we have this thing where we feel that your life needs to be hard to appreciate the good things in life too. I personally, just me personally, don't really feel like that's necessarily true. I get it. Yeah, it can happen. It can help, but I don't think it's necessary. There's an infinite amount of great things you can experience in life. And I think you're a great example of that. I don't know your personal life. Again, I don't know what you went through, what hell you might have been through, because all that stuff is relative to the person's being. But I think you do represent that. And then also, so I love hearing what you're saying. Now, how did all of a sudden you just decide? Because I was reading, what I was looking at on your website is that you used to do cold calls to people. So is that right? In sales?
Yes.
And I would hear some of the responses that you got, which made me laugh, with some of the responses that you got, and that it didn't just tarnish your soul or make you bitter towards people. I mean, how do you maintain that upbeat feeling personality and to say, now I want to do this on my own?
It was almost like, because I knew in sales that it wasn't, people didn't like me. They didn't like the idea of me, a total stranger, reaching out and flooding their email inbox with these messages about a data analytics product. And sales was really important for me because one, you build up that thick skin because you learn not to take those things personally. So like on one of the responses, like the guy called me a cockroach. People like tweet about me and say that I was being incredibly annoying. But at the same time, I was like, well, you're on an email drip that goes out every 3 days because you might not respond, but people are going to respond because of this system that we have in place. And those people are going to become customers eventually. So in a way, it made me think about things. Like I thought sales was going to be a very personal journey, and that's kind of why I wanted to go into it, like a person-to-person thing. But what I realized was it was much more like a systems thing where you have to fill the top of the funnel. And if you're filling it with prospects, eventually, throughout the stages, they're going to become customers at the bottom. You might have to send out like 100 emails just to get 2 conversations to lead to 1 customer or whatever. But yeah, I learned not to take it personally, and then I remember going like to a concert, and this was while I was working in sales, and seeing the people perform and how excited everyone in the audience was to see them perform. And it stuck with me that these people paid their hard-earned money to go see these people, and they were ecstatic to see them. When people hear from me, they're so mad. So I was like, how do I get to that side where people are excited to hear from me? And then I started reaching out to people for the project. And in the early days, I would just say, hey, my name is Rob. Here's a bit about me. I went to Penn State from the suburbs of Philly. I have this idea to meet 10,000 different people. Do you want to be one of the first 10? And then because there was no agenda attached to it, people were willing to sit down with me. And then one thing just led to another. And then as word of mouth spreads and then press starts to pick up on it and other bigger accounts are posting about me and whatnot, then it got to a place where people, their tone changed from like, what are you doing? Like, I don't understand the concept of what this is, to people from around the world messaging me and being like, this is so cool. I want to be part of this. How do I become part of it? So I got to that place where the performers were in it. It's a much better place to be in than in the sales where people are calling you cockroaches.
Yeah. I was reading on one response, and I'm going to paraphrase what they were saying, is that, like if you're asking someone out on a date or trying to get to know them or something, and they keep rejecting you, and then you don't stop asking them, that's like, stop doing that. And which I get on one side. But how many friends, if I have to also throw where things aren't just black and white, how many friends, I know I have a lot in my life that are together now, even married, that had that story where she couldn't stand him in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Or that person was, the reason why I'm with that person was because they didn't stop. They were persistent. And now we love each other, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a line there. And I guess depending on the individuals involved, where do you just quit on the first rejection? Go ahead.
It's a very great line, right? Yeah. You either end up with like a spouse or a restraining order, I guess. I don't know.
So when you started reaching out to people, because it seems like it was an invitation, right? I guess the cynical side of me is like, so what are you getting? Like a lot of depressed people that are just lonely, somebody will talk to me.
No, because in the beginning I was kind of handcrafting who I was reaching out to, and I didn't know like with their happiness level at all, if they were happy or depressed or whatever. Actually, there's a website called billypenn.com. And it has like a who's next list of Philadelphia, like who's next in the culinary scene or who's next in the art scene or the political scene. And because I was in sales, I was so used to just finding contacts on websites, finding their emails and sending them an email. So I thought, I'm going to take this list of all these people from these different industries in Philly that will help me diversify the project from like different backgrounds and whatnot. And I'm going to message all of them. And I started with music people because music is a big passion of mine. So one of the girls that I met early on, actually a few of the people that I met, they were all pretty much artistic. The first guy was the founder of that billypenn.com. He was the very first person that I met. He thought that I was already like 1,000 people into the project. So I'm glad he didn't know that beforehand, that he was number one. But he and I met, and then I met a couple of artists in Philadelphia. I was just Googling Philadelphia artists, and it took me to this site in liquid.com. And I would look through their artwork, and if I thought it was cool, I would shoot them a message and be like, hey, I have this project. I have nothing to offer you other than as my network grows, yours will grow with it. And I guess that was enough for people. And I met with artists. The one guy thought that I was running a multi-level marketing scheme, but for some reason still met with me. And then figured out that I wasn't, because I didn't hit him up for anything afterwards. But the one girl, I think she was like the 9th or 10th person. She played violin in the Philadelphia Orchestra. She taught me how to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star on the violin during our hour together. So it was cool. And then those people, I think when they would have that experience with me and they would get a sense of my character and like understand that it wasn't any sales type thing, they'd be like, oh, you know who you should meet is this person and that person. And that's kind of how it started to take off.
Yeah. And you say ideally you'll spend at least an hour with the people that you come in contact with. Is there any pressure for you that when that hour's up, that all of a sudden you guys got to be best friends, or that it's only a positive experience?
I don't see that pressure. I don't know how other people see it coming in, but for me, I'm very like, the goal is to spend 1 hour one-on-one with 10,000 different people. And sometimes the title of the project trips people up, like Rob's 10K Friends. And I've seen it be posted in media before, and people are like, oh, you can't be friends with 10,000 different people. Like, it's quantity, it's quality, not quantity. Like, that's a dumb project. And for me, I think you can sit with a person for an hour and never talk to them again, and they still have a profound impact on your life, because their story might change the way that you think about things, or they might make an introduction to someone who changes your life, or give you a bit of knowledge that you take with you that helps you solve an issue. Like, to me, you don't have to have touch points every month or week for it to be worth it to sit with someone. And I think that's, my mind maybe operates a little bit different than most people in that way when it comes to connection. Because to me, it's an experience. And that's why, like, if it goes off the rails, I can sit back and be like, wow, this is interesting. What an experience. And that's why there is no agenda. And I genuinely like to hear about people's lives and want to know who they are. So I'm just trying to get the most accurate picture of who this person is during my time with them, because then I write about them too. And I want to make sure that when I write about people to an audience, people feel accurately portrayed. So to me, that's a priority. But yeah, all different types of directions, and wherever it goes, it goes. And for me, I feel like I buckle up and I go for the ride, because that's what I decided when I chose to take this path.
Yeah. Have you ever had a crazy experience, bad experience?
I can't say that I've had a bad experience or a crazy experience. And it's kind of because of that mindset. Like, I think someone else could go through the exact same path that I had and be like, oh, I have a crazy story about this, or like, this meeting was really annoying, or I didn't like this person. But for me, I'm like, wow, I'm learning how to interact with this type of personality, or look how this person views the world. There was one guy who I met in Philadelphia. I was riding my bike to the gym, and I had someone cancel on me that day, and he was panhandling in the street, and he was in a wheelchair. And I had just met someone who was he's struggling with homelessness in the city, and like, there were these people who took him in and helped him get surgeries and stuff. And I met with him and shared his story. So when I saw this guy on the street, I was like, I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna ask him if he wants to be part of my project. And it was very interesting, because he was like, yeah, I'll sit with you for your hour, but I'm still gonna panhandle. So I was sitting on the curb it was right by the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. It was on 5th Street, like 5th and Market, if anyone in the Philly area knows where that is. And he was panhandling, but also I got to see how he interacted with other people. And he would ask everyone for like $1 or whatever, and they would ignore them because in their mind, they're like, he just wants money. And then he would ask them for a smile. And because they already wrote him off when he asked for the $1, they wouldn't hear that second question. And that really hurt him. And then he would get really upset when no one would give him a smile. So it's just something like an interesting step into his life. And he was also very like against the man. And he had me on the corner of this street. He was like, yell that you're a man. And I was like, I'm a man. And he was like, no, he's like, you got to be louder than that. And I was like, what am I doing right now with my life? Like, I'm sitting in the middle of Philadelphia on the street corner yelling about how I'm a man because this guy just told me to. So sometimes you end up in situations like that.
That's great. That's almost like a liberating exercise where you can, again, you just yell, oh man!
Yeah, he's like a momentary life coach.
That's pretty cool. But you come across right away. I mean, even me first seeing you when we came on here, you're not threatening. You know, I have no threat from you. And you remind me, I get the same feeling from you that I get from some of my friends and certainly my brother. You're just a big easy chair right away. That like if I'm walking through maybe the mall or something, they have those big old easy chairs and you just sit in it. You know, it's just going to form around you and you feel comfortable. You'll just get to slouch, be you in this chair. And now if somebody has a problem, then that's going to speak more about them to me than it would about you. You allow people just by that presence to sort of, it's almost like you're holding your hand and I'll walk with you through whatever this is you're feeling. You know, I'll be there. I'll be the hug you may need or getting through that. Do people tell you that about yourself?
I do get that sometimes. People say I have like good vibes or good energy. And it's nice to hear that. I describe myself as a very mellow, relaxed person. and very go with the flow, which is how I like to live my life. And I think it's why I structure my meetings the way that I do, because formality makes me anxious. Like times even through my project, if I meet someone and we're like meeting in their conference room in an office building, I feel more anxious in that environment than if we're just chatting in a coffee shop, because then I feel like all of a sudden there's like expectations of, I try to live life without expectation. There's a great quote that I heard once. I think it was like some Google executive that said, happiness is the difference between expectation and reality, which is why I try to live a lot of my life without expectation, because then everything becomes a pleasant surprise, or it becomes an experience where you're just there to like be with it in that moment. So yeah, I do get that a lot. And I try to be that way for other people too. Even like if someone comes to my project and I can tell that they're nervous, or sometimes people message me before and they say like, yeah, I'm excited to talk to you tomorrow, but I am a bit nervous. And I'll tell them that it's okay to be nervous, but we're going to just flow and go wherever it goes. There's nothing that we have to talk about. So we're just there to chill. And if you want to talk to me about how you're nervous and how you're anxious, that's fine too. We can talk about that and talk about what your experience was with it, because I've certainly had experiences like that in my life, and as have a lot of people out there.
Yeah. Maybe you can teach a course on living without expectations. That's hard to do. That seems like that's a survival instinct. We have visuals, we have a vision or an idea of certain things that we're about to go into in the future. I used to say this, I have a stand-up background, and I used to say on stage how, and this is true of me, is that again, if I have a project or something in the future that's coming up that means a lot to me, I always visualize how, we can't help it, visualize how it's going to go. And I have an exact visual of how, and it never goes exactly like how I visualize it. Never has it gone exactly like how I have thought it's going to go or visualize it. But the cool thing about that is 99% of the times I can tell you exactly how something is not going to go once I catch myself doing that. So yeah, to not have expectations. Wow, man, that's a gift in itself. Yeah. One of the things that I saw in one of your blogs that caught my attention was the untapped value of human connections in that book. I love that, because I think that we don't really appreciate what a connection to humans, not just humans, but life in general, what the effect that it has on us as beings. Talk to me about that blog and what you've learned and what you're expressing to people in that blog.
Yeah, I probably haven't read that in years, but I'll think back to the themes, because I then did a TEDx talk called the Untapped Value of Human Connection. I'm pretty sure I took from that blog to do it, but to me, and it kind of goes back to that idea of like an hour being worth your time of spending with someone. I think there's levels of value to human connection. And I think at the very base level, there's a sense of belonging. Like us having this conversation right now, it's like, we feel like we belong to this conversation. And if I were to run into you at the next Tough Mudder event and be like, oh, Sean, what's up? It's so good to see you. It was so fun to talk with you on the podcast or whatever. You have that familiarity with each other, but you get that by creating a foundational relationship, like, which is just time spent together, focused on each other. So that's been a big thing for me, and it's really expanded over. So just as a side note, I met 3,259 people all in person. And my whole goal was to meet every single person in person. And eventually I would have like brand partnerships or whatever that would allow me to travel to do this. And I wanted to get to all different countries and cities. And then COVID happened, so I had to pivot, and I went virtual. But what happened is I posted an Instagram post, and I said, hey, COVID's happening. I'm going to go virtual through Zoom, so hit me up if you want to be part of it virtually. And in 24 hours, I had like over 200 people message me from all around the world. And then thanks to TikTok and me putting out videos there, people started hitting me up from other countries. Now I've met people from 85 different countries. And if you go back to that sense of belonging, it's like when you talk to someone from like a place like Latvia and they're like, if you're ever here, you have a place to stay, just hit me up. I spoke to a guy last week from Barcelona. And he's like, we have a guest room. So when you're in Barcelona, let me know. you can stay at our guest room. And all of a sudden I have access to 85 different countries that before, like, I feel like I belong to them because I know I have a landing spot there with a relationship with someone that I've met before. So that's one piece that I don't think people consider, is that increased sense of belonging. The other is the shift in perspective. Like, you don't think about so as a quick example, I mentioned earlier that I'm one of 3 siblings and my parents are still together and still alive. I met 2 girls in Philadelphia who both were students at Drexel University. So probably around 20 years old. Both were only children. Both of them have lost both of their parents already. So I'm hearing about their experience of, like, at 20 years old, you are the sole survivor of your immediate family. Meanwhile, I have my 2 older siblings still here and I still have both my parents. Like, how can you not have gratitude for those gifts when you learn about the fact that other people, it was taken from them so young? So for me, and I live with my parents now, as I'm building this project, I've crashed with friends, I've come back, I've been back since June of 2020. But I tell my mom and my dad I love them every night before I go to bed, because I'm like, I have this time with them. I have this bonus time with them that a lot of other people don't get. So I want them to realize and hear that every day, that I love them. And I think that perspective also goes for learning about a new book or learning about a new podcast. It's just that knowledge exchange. And then the last thing is the opening of doors for future opportunities. And this is the very last person that I met before COVID happened. The last person I met in person was this guy, AJ, who happens to work for Tough Mudder. And and then earlier this year, AJ's like, hey, Tough Mudder is going to be back in New Jersey. You should come out to the event. I do the event. I see you do your speech. I talked to AJ afterwards, and then he hits me up recently because I had just posted some of the pictures of the event to my Instagram account. And it was like, it was us going through the electrocution at the end and how funny our faces looked. And I posted him, he responded, and then he invited me to be part of the podcast. So when I met AJ on March 11th or whatever it was, I didn't know that I was going to end up on the podcast and being at Tough Mudder again. But because I established that connection, it's a door that opened for the future. So those are the 3 levels for me. It's like a sense of belonging, a shift in perspective, and open doors for the future. And I think a lot of people tend to think only of the open doors part.
Yeah. If this is the AJ that you're talking about, and I only know one AJ with Tough Mudder, he's our events manager and coordinator at a lot of the events. And that's very cool because I think, I do remember him mentioning you now and suggesting you to the people that, the smarter people that helps with this podcast of having you on. So, that clicked when you said that. Oh, okay, that's what this is right here. Yeah. See, and I like something that you said too. I feel like with Tough Mudder, there's a really strong community there that I call family, my Mudder family, chosen family. And I feel the same way too. And you get those invites. Hey, if you're ever in town, come on out. We'll take you to dinner. If you need a place to stay, yada, 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 that kind of stuff, which I think is so cool. And I feel the same way, vice versa. I would do that for people I have a connection with also. Do you ever get that, though? I mean, do you ever have to yell up to the parents, hey, Mom, Dad, Sasha's coming from Latvia. He's going to stay with us for a couple of weeks. He offered me. I had to offer him. Do you ever have... Go ahead.
I haven't had that instance yet, and I don't know how that would go if I just randomly told my parents, because they know of my project and whatnot, but they are not as adventurous in the sense of like that they would go. I mean, they don't have a problem with people, but they're not certainly like putting themselves out there to meet more than you meet in your natural life. But yeah, I think about that. Like when I have my own place, which hopefully I'll move out within the next few months, but. Yeah, it feels like a little bit like the couch surfing community.
Yeah, which is very cool. I remember the days when people would go, friends would go to Europe, and when you made friends, grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and was into that whole scene, had friends who used to throw the parties there and raves and stuff like that. And you meet a lot of people from all over the world at these events, and they do become friends. And one of the benefits was, again, when you'd go and travel to that country, you, like you said, couch surf, you got a genuine friend, and vice versa, though. You offered that to people too. So I totally feel that. I think that's very, very cool. But man, you put yourself in a vulnerable position with what you're doing too. You're offering to a friendship again. And wow, you can get the worst of people also. You can open yourself up to that. Do you feel that? Is that a concern for you?
I don't know. In terms of, you mean like people placing their issues on you or trying to like rope you into them?
Or I'll even go further. Somebody saying, look at this guy. Man, he makes me sick. So I'm going to buddy up with him. He's going to come here and then I'm going to kick his ass.
Oh,
yeah,
gotcha.
Kind of thing. Yeah. Because some people are just, you are what I call, I always, I've said mirror man, I given the title to myself as a mirror man, but I think everybody, someone like you, is a mirror man also, or a mirror person even, in that you touch people inside in a very vulnerable place, scary place that a lot of us don't even want to look at, but you reflect that to us. So, and a lot of times being a mirror, it's scary to go in there to ourselves, and it's easier to just break the mirror. Blame it on the mirror. The mirror's bad. So you become that, I think, or you can become that for some people that are really lost, hurt, or just, threatened by you.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never had that situation, and I think part of it is just being smart about meeting people in like coffee shops and bars and whatnot, in public places. But I think the other part maybe goes back to that idea of my energy in the space that I like to create for people. I think a lot of people could use a listening ear in life, and they finally come across me as a chance to just unfiltered share their story and know that I'm going to be there to acknowledge it and not judge it and respect it. And I've had people tell me like the depths of their souls. Sometimes I've heard a lot of sad things through my project, and I've cried with a few of the people that I've met with. So it does get to a very vulnerable place, but I don't think anyone's ever been angry in that place, because now there's an outlet for someone. I've had a lot of people be like, oh, talking to you is like a therapy session, which I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Like, I'm happy that you got that out. But yeah, it's an interesting thing too, because there's also this unwritten kind of agreement that I'm going to treat their story with care. So I have people that tell me really sad things that would make for some really like great Instagram posts that would get a lot of likes and comments, but I don't post that part because I'm not there to entertain people with their story. I'm there to share a bit about someone that I made a connection with. So I think people enjoy that I come to the table with that respect. And as a result, they bring it as well.
Yeah, I think your superhero strength is that comfortability, for lack of a better word. Again, like I said, that big easy chair feeling that you are. So I think, yes, just as you said, that would be sort of one of your protections against that, is that when somebody meets you or has a few moments with you, they gotta like kind of, if they got any kind of humanity in them whatsoever, they're kind of like, well, this guy's no threat. And then all of a sudden I'm talking about those things that I was afraid to talk about with him. He's kind of like holding my hand, or I'm sitting in this chair with him and I'm relaxed. I can go there now. So I'm gonna get you with maybe the big superhero outfit with a big C on it. Comfortability, I don't know. Age, humanity, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is like, I think what's cool is I don't care if people go to that place or not. Like, I could meet with someone, we could talk about the Philadelphia Eagles for an hour, and I'd be fine with that. So there's no desire for me to like uncover people's baggage. Oftentimes people lead me there on their own. And I think it just comes from that place of comfortability and like the having a listening ear and whatnot. But I think that's a big thing too, because I think sometimes in like a media interview or whatever, they're trying to get to like that meat of the story that's going to have that viral moment. For me, it's just not that way. I just care about the time spent together with that person.
I appreciate that. It's like you're not out there to exploit people, like a lot of what entertainment is these days. It's that a character car crash, that we can't wait for in this show. So well done on your part. Thank you for being like that. What about on the other side of it? Do you find yourself sharing things that you wouldn't think you would have shared with somebody you didn't know 5 minutes ago?
I guess so. I'm a pretty open book as well. And I feel like authenticity and vulnerability is the best place to come from if you really want to establish a connection with someone. And specifically when it comes to the project, like I'm very open with people about like having to have had to crash with friends or having to live with my parents now, and like building up to a place where I can afford to move out, or at times only having $500 to my name, because I'm in no way ashamed of that. To me, it's like, those are just the sacrifices I've had to make to continue doing this. And I have this unwavering faith that this is going to work out. So for me, it's part of the process. And then I enjoy talking about it because I think there are probably other people. Like I've talked to a guy today who he has like a project called Excuses to Connect, or a business called Excuses to Connect. And he once struggled with his social skills, and he did a lot of work on himself, and now he tries to help be a connection coach for other people. And I was telling him about this background part of myself, and he's like, that's crazy, because on the outside looking in, I would have thought that you were really successful financially and like you were just coasting with this project. But now, because I opened up that part of myself to him, he's going to feel more permission to do his work when it's not working immediately financially. And I think that's going to help the other people who are working towards their dreams too, because as is often the case, you only see people once they hit the success. And then it's like, you don't see all the work and struggle that went into it. So yeah, I try to be open about the project and just other parts of my life with people too, because I think it leads to a greater sense of relatability with people.
Now, when I was a kid, well, not when I was a kid, early in my life, there was a quote that I heard that it sort of brought words to a feeling that I was feeling or experiencing in life. And I'm not sure if I even got this quote exactly right. I'm going to paraphrase it, that humans are a better person than a people. And you speak with people, you only speak with one person at a time, right? You don't talk, if it's never you and maybe a group of people that you're conversing with, or me. Okay, so I was going to ask you your opinion on that, because one-on-one, it seems that, again, people will get personal. Somebody that might have been a part of this crazy group, radical group, all of a sudden when you're talking to them one-on-one, you can kind of get past all that ideology, or even if they still have that, you can get the human part to what got them there or who they are. Have you found that in your talks?
Yeah, and I have had sometimes people show up with like two people, and I'm really big into the integrity of 1 hour one-on-one with each person. So sometimes I'll be like, oh, you can come along too, but I'm only going to share this person's story. If you want to be part of my project, I'll set up a separate time with you. But I prefer to meet with people one-on-one, because if you add a third party in, then you get that person in the context of the other person. Like they speak knowing that other person is listening to them. Whereas if it's just one-on-one, they're speaking just to tell you about themselves. And it totally changes the dynamic. And yeah, I much prefer one-on-one, because then I think you get the true sense. And then there becomes that respect that what you talk about is in a safe environment, and like, I'll be conscious of what I post about you and whatever. But yeah, and then sometimes I have people who reach out. I've gotten the joke so many times. People be like, oh, come to my holiday party. You'll check off 25 people at once. And I think there's that misconception that people think, which to me helped me realize that I'm passionate about this. Like people think that I'm just trying to like just rush my way through this and get to the end so I can use it to do something, which is not the case. I'm here because I love what I'm doing right now, and I appreciate the journey that I'm on. So I very methodically want it to be one person at a time, because I'm enjoying it. Like that's the way that I like to get to know people. And it might take 8 more years. It might take 12 more years, but I'm okay with that because I'm enjoying the ride.
Yeah. On your Instagram, too, you show the traveling that you've done. And you just mentioned that you've traveled across the country, into Canada, talked to people from different countries. How do you afford to do this, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. I guess the starting piece is I worked at Deloitte Consulting for a year and 3 months. My starting salary was $72,500. So I had a great salary coming out of school. And then I went to the tech startup and I did sales for them, probably making around the same thing for a year and 9 months. So professionally, I worked for 3 years. And then when I took this full time, I thought to myself, okay, this is your budget to get this off the ground. And if you remember, I worked for a financial advisor in high school. So I was very careful about my money and very thrifty with it as a foundation. So I think that helped in stretching it. But yeah, I saw that as my budget. And then as my Instagram account started to grow, which it's happened more often back then with pages, I started to think, okay, I'll be able to loop in different brands for partnerships, and that will help me sustain myself going forward. And it was really just like a Philly project at first. I always intended to bring it to other parts of the world, but the people that I was meeting were in Philly. The people who were following me were in Philly. So I started to get sponsored by Philly businesses. In March of 2017, I sat down with this guy, Chris, who runs a pharmacy in the Fishtown neighborhood of Philadelphia called Fishtown Pharmacy. And we were talking about partnerships, and he was like, I wish I could support you. I think what you're doing is so cool. And at the time, I'd been thinking, I'm going to have one company sponsor me every month. And then eventually, it'll be so popular that multiple companies will want to sponsor me, and I'll be able to leverage them off of each other, which is how naive I was back then. But
that's a great dream.
Yeah. So if people are trying to do that, don't. It doesn't work. But I did have, he sponsored me, and it was March 10th, and I said, yeah, well, I've been thinking I could have a company sponsor me, and I'll tag them in every post. And then at the bottom of every caption, I'll put presented this month by Fishtown Pharmacy. And I said, how does $200 sound for you? And he said, I'll give you $300 and we'll call it a deal. And that kind of interaction is how people saw my project. I think the people who sponsored me were like, here's an opportunity for me to play a role in this thing that is doing good for the world. I like what he's doing in the community of Philadelphia and beyond. So I want to help him. So the early partnerships that I had were as much of a donation as it was a partnership. And because I was posting about Fishtown Pharmacy every day, this urgent care center, Vibe Urgent Care, was a new urgent care center in Philly. And they reached out and they said, hey, what's the deal with your partnership? We see you posting about this other company. How do we get involved? And then they became my partner for the next month. And then my dentist, who is a guy that I started going to because he was part of my project, was like, why didn't you ask me to sponsor you? I would have done it. And then he became my sponsor for the next month. And then the next month was a leadership program. But then my lease in Philadelphia ended, and I drove across the country out to Los Angeles, California. I drove there using my brother's car because he had moved to New York City, left his car with me. I asked him if I could use it. And I stayed with strangers, I stayed with friends, and I used hotel points from my consulting days to get it across the country. And in LA, it was my friend from Penn State, my roommate senior year, and he was like, stay as long as you need to. I have this apartment. I have an extra bedroom. You don't have to pay rent. You can just crash with me. And I stayed with him for 3 months, and we had such a good time being roommates together again that he invited me to come back and stay with him. So I drove back to Philly. I stayed there for 5 months. I drove back to LA. I stayed there for 9 months. Went back to Philly for 4, back to LA for 3, Philly for 2. And then I had another friend who he and his wife hosted me in Hoboken for 9 months, and same thing. And that's just a testament to how good of friends I have. And again, why I would be encouraged to want to go out and create connections, because I've had such a positive experience with it in the past. And they helped minimize the financial burden of living expenses, right? Because I didn't have this huge rent check every month. And while I was staying with them, the project was still growing. I started to be on Ryan Seacrest's radio show, and then the Kelly Clarkson show hits me up. And then I send these press things to the WeWork, the co-working space. And because Ryan Seacrest covered me, then they're going to pay attention to me. And then we do a partnership together that lasts 9 months. And the very last day of that is when I meet AJ at a WeWork in New York City. But yeah, it was the partnerships that have kind of allowed me, and really the people being willing to host me, and me not spending money on anything other than gas or food or absolute necessities. And then recently, like this summer, I started getting into public speaking, and that's been a really good spot for me. And that's the place that I plan to put most of my, like, we'll say business or like income energy into in the future, because I really just started reaching out to people in May. I spoke at Amazon in July to one of their DEI teams. I spoke to Boston consulting group Digital Ventures like a couple of weeks after that. And then I spoke at University of Tennessee at Martin, a community college in New Jersey. I spoke at Pepperdine. So it's just grown. And I'm seeing, like, with COVID and with the technology before that, there's this space for people to want to understand, like, how do we talk to people again? How do we treat each other's stories with respect, and how do we uncover them in a delicate manner? And then I arrive and I'm like, oh, cool. I've done this with people from 85 different countries, people who are totally different than I am. And somehow I've had an amazing experience with it every time. So I'm happy to teach you what I know. And now that's kind of like, if I can get to a place of doing 1 to 2 speaking gigs a month, I can kind of get back on my feet to where I was at Deloitte. And then it's just a matter of balancing the speaking life with the project life. And that's something that I'm happy to do and I'm excited to do.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. I wonder then, are there anything on YouTube of any of your talks? Have you noticed or discovered anything? Somebody recorded. You know, people record everything these days.
So a lot of them, I think only 3 of them have been in person, and the rest have been virtual. So it's been kind of hard to like record virtually, which is a shame, because in the business of public speaking, it's so important to have a demo reel and to have your site set up and everything. But I'm doing a few in-person things coming up, so hopefully I'll have footage of that, speaking to audiences of like 200 people, which will be great. But yeah, nothing yet. I do have a TEDx talk that I did back in April, which because of COVID was recorded virtually, and it kind of, it's that untapped value of human connection. And yeah, looking back on it now, like as I rewatch it, I'm like, oh, the themes are good. I like what I talked about, but I could be stronger at delivering my message. Which is then when I go back to thinking about watching you speak at the start of Tough Mudder, it's a gift to really be able to like get the emotion of people going. And it's the variety and the tone of your voice and the pauses that you take and the speed. And you're very good at that. So that's why I was like, I need to be like Sean, because he's got that down.
You know, the simplicity of that is honesty. And it starts with being honest to yourself, and then being honest to those that you're connecting with. You know, because each of you are going to take each other in a place, again, that's going to be very vulnerable. And you kind of got to be honest with how you feel and how you express that, what's going on in you. But the bottom line for me, the foundation of all what you just said, is honesty. Honesty. It's a cool tool to discover so much about yourself and the people around you. Real quick too, and now speaking of honesty, yeah, because I'm thinking that is your tool, that is what connects you to people also. Then if a sponsors come up to you and says, okay, because now I'm putting on my corporate cap, you know, okay, well, I want this guy sponsoring my company because he feels good. And that's what it's all about. If I can get people to feel good, when they see him, they'll see my company name on that. So I'm calling you up. You know, I'm from Club Baby Seals, and we want you to be a sponsor for our because we got a community that loves the Club Baby Seals. We'll take them up into the Arctic and CCBS. You'll be the perfect face and the perfect image for that. We're going to offer you $1 million. Will you take it?
I would not. No, I think no. I think there's so much like, if I were driven by money, I wouldn't be 6 years into a project that has largely not given me money. So for me, it's like the legacy and the impact. And yeah, that's another reason why I like the public speaking so much, because I have had partnerships, but when you do that, you're bringing someone else's brand kind of into your brand. And it does, and I've tried to do it in really authentic ways, but sometimes it does pull away from the authenticity of like for example, when I used to meet people at WeWork, rather than starting the post with a quote, which I do with every person, it would be like, this post is presented by WeWork. If you enjoy my project, like give them a follow and let them know you came from me. And then for those people who I met that day, like their post unfortunately didn't start with their quote, which is a small thing, but it's still a thing that impacts the authenticity to an extent. And then you're playing that game in your mind where you're like, well, I still have to eat and afford groceries at the end of the day, and I can't afford these groceries if I don't do this. So that again is a gray line, but I think you can be like responsible with that. And I think if I were driven by the money, I would be more proactive about trying to get just anyone to sponsor me, because there are companies out there that will have you like throw their discount code up or whatever, or give you a couple $100 to post this or post that. But for me, I just want people to experience my page as a place where they can go read about other people and kind of forget about all that other stuff.
Yeah, to me, and this is my outside view, again, I don't know everything about you, but right now you're past that line of success in that you're able to live, but you're doing a phenomenal thing. You're in your connection with people, and that you can make even a penny from that. Man, to me, that's successful. That's success. So again, well done again, sir. I could talk to you forever. Again, this is a great holiday talk with you. You got great vibes about you. So let me ask you this stuff real quick before I get you out of here. Now, you use the word friends, 10K friends, which when I first looked at it before I knew exactly what was going on, I thought it was a running thing. This guy that has friends that are runners, but they don't want to do marathons.
Oh, okay.
But they want to casual out there. So when you said that, but the word friend right there by itself, what is that to you? What is a friend to you?
I think there are levels to it. And I think in terms of the project, the way that I see it is like, these are my friends of friends of the High Line. If you ever thought of the High Line in New York City, it's like that little old railroad that was like turned into a park that people can walk to. And the friends of it are like people who are donors for it. And it's different context for my project, but I mean that in the sense that it can be different than like, hey, we're best friends that are hanging out all the time. For me, it's like people that I have spent a friendly hour with and established a foundation with, that when I pass later, I can see as a friend as opposed to a stranger. And that might be people who I haven't seen in 6 years, that similar to when you see someone from high school that you haven't seen since high school, and you're like, I don't know what this person has done since high school, but I know they're not a stranger to me because I know we had that foundational experience back then where we knew each other. And if you have that touch point again, maybe you come back in contact and you're building on that going forward. So that's how I kind of see the project, is like, I'm opening the door with people. And I did a podcast with this guy, Cal Fussman, he's a great podcaster. And the audio messed up the first time. The second time I had a cough, and this is pre-COVID, and they couldn't edit it out. So we had to meet up 3 times to do this podcast. And he was saying that he heard that it takes 90 hours with someone to really feel like they're a friend of yours. And I thought that was cool, because I'm like, I think in the formula of friendship, it does take time, but so you can peel back the layers of who you are as a person, and you gain each other's trust, and you start to reveal certain things to each other. So if 90 hours is the benchmark, like I'm just hitting 1 hour with a lot of people. And then every touch point I have with them afterwards, whether they invite me to an event or I pass them on the street, it's just adding time towards that 90 hours.
Now, I know people used to always get on each other for the whole thing with Facebook, but they still call themselves Facebook, Meta, whatever they call themselves this day. Yeah. When you accept somebody as a friend and they're like, really? Are all those people your friends? Really? Then what is a friend to you? And I used to always joke about my line for friend is, this would be a person that I would pick up at the airport if they flew into my town, or give them a ride there. Because that was always like a big deal, I don't know, to me and family and friends, and like for some reason, asking somebody to take you to the airport, they're like, oh man, ask me anything, but please don't ask me to pick you up and take you to the airport. So I was always curious on, again, someone, when you're using that word, what are you visualizing? What are you
Mhm.
feeling when you say friend?
Yeah.
You know?
And I think about in my life, I have very good groups of close friends, being my fraternity brothers from Penn State, my tour guide friends from Penn State. There's a few people from high school that I'm still very close with. And if given the choice of where I'll put my time and who I'll hang out with, it's those people that I would choose to hang out with. And I see them as a very like tight inner circle, and I'm very close with my family as well. But yeah, beyond that, I think it's just so important to like, and it goes back to that theme that I've been talking about throughout, like how much of an impact someone can have on you or you can have on them, despite how much time you spend together.
And I also read too, where you said there are people that want to meet you, but they feel that they're not interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to people who feel like that?
I personally think everyone is interesting, especially for me. When I write about people, everyone's like, oh, everyone you meet is so interesting. I'm writing like 5 sentences of a person's life. Anyone in the world, you can distill their life down to an interesting 5 sentences if you just pull out the bits. So everyone is interesting. And then for me, the other thing is I don't care how interesting you are. Like I'm not judging the value of the experience on how interesting a person is. Some of my most interesting conversations, I've not really had the best chemistry with those people. Some of my most boring conversations, I've had the best chemistry with them, and I've really enjoyed those experiences. So I don't think that it's a thing that really even needs to be considered in terms of coming to meet. And I guess I can see where they're coming from, because they're like, oh, I'm going to meet with this guy. He's going to post my story to Instagram. Other people are going to read that. I want people to think that when he puts my narrative out there, that I'm an interesting person. So I understand from a human level where they're coming from. But for me, the person running the project, I don't really care about it. And then the other thing is, I think the most interesting parts of people are the most authentic parts of themselves. Like, I just think what people are genuinely interested in is what makes them unique. And I think about that all the time. Like, I talked to a guy today who he's played the flute since the 7th grade. I don't play the flute. It's not something that I've ever played, but to hear him talk about his passion for the flute and the fact that that made him study music in college and what impact that had on his life, to me, that's interesting. That's like, oh, this is a big part of your life. And I enjoy hearing you talk about something that you care about.
Yeah, I love that too with people. I always love seeing people at their best. I'm addicted to that connection with people. What's the goal for the project now?
It's the goal is to complete it.
What would be complete?
To meet 10,000 people one-on-one for 1 hour each. And I'll expand.
So you're not going to, wait. So you're not going to meet 10,001? Some person going to call you, oh God, I finally get to talk to you. No, sorry, got the 10,000. Can't talk to you.
We'll have to see when that time comes. I don't think I'd be opposed to it, because I think I want intentional human connection to always be a part of my life. But if I'm feeling fulfilled, like I'll feel fulfilled once I do the project. So it's a lot of the journey and not the destination of, I am just excited to see what comes of it. I've learned so much. The way that I view the world and society is so much different now than it was 6 years ago. I feel like I'm a wiser person and a more empathetic person, and I care or like see the depth of people more often. So I continue to just plan to grow in those areas within the next 10 years or whatever it takes me to do the project. I want to continue to grow as a speaker, to have an impact on people, encouraging them to be intentional about connection in their life. Because I would say, like, it to me, it doesn't make sense that people set goals to go to the gym 3 days a week, and they set a goal to do an hour of learning a language 1 day a week or whatever. But no one really out there has goals of like, I want to meet 1 new person a month. And to me, given the choice between those options, the one that's most valuable for your time is you choosing to meet with that person. So I want more people to adopt that mindset and see the value in it and just make it a regular part of their life. And there are ripple effects. There's 2 guys in Toronto who decided, I like what Rob's doing, so we're going to go meet 100 new people during quarantine. And they did that. And because they did that, there was a girl in the States who was like, I'm going to try to meet 1 person from every country in the world. And because she was working on that, there was a guy in Germany who was like, I'm going to try to meet 1 person from every country in the world in 80 days. And now all of a sudden there's these multiple people having these multiple projects of connection. And if that continues to snowball, eventually you get to a place where empathy is being created at a faster rate in the world. And that's something that I think is really cool. Like I would love to hang my hat on that someday. And after the project, what I see myself doing is becoming a professor at a university and teaching a course where students pair off one-on-one and learn from each other's backgrounds as opposed to a textbook or a PowerPoint slide. Because yes, the extroverted people will join the clubs, they'll make the friends easily. But what about the socially anxious people or the people who don't have confidence in their social skills? Like I want to create that space where people who are not going to find each other would come together and have conversations. Because I want people from two completely different backgrounds to understand what it's like. I want them to be exposed to that so they know that going forward. And then it's like you're telling your story 30 different times. You're listening to other people's story 30 different times. You're learning how to iterate on that and get your message across in the clearest manner and how to understand someone else. And like job interviews, dating, friendships, I think it applies to all of that. So I want to do that. I want to be like that dude that just like chills at home with his wife and kids and then has completed this really cool project and is now like the cool professor that shares his life experience with the students.
You know, in this world where influencers are making millions of dollars now, and I know this isn't what your first motivation for what you're doing at all is, but I hope that, you know, you are able to make a good living so that you can continue doing this. Is there a common thread you find in everyone you've talked with in their stories?
I always say, and you'll hear me say it on a lot of other places as well, but I've learned that no one really knows what they're doing with their lives. Everyone is just doing the best they can with the resources that they have. And I think all too often, created by cultures like Instagram, people look at everyone around them and they assume everyone but me has their life together. When in reality, it's no one, including you, has their life together. So like you're not the outlier. You're part of the majority in that situation. And I wish more people knew that in high school, in college, in the professional world, when they're older, because I think a lot of people do walk around with that imposter syndrome, and it's strictly because they haven't taken the time or to talk to people, or they just haven't been exposed to it for one reason or another. But I have. So now when I'm like very confident in social situations because I'm like, well, my sample size of how a person acts is bigger than your sample size. So I feel comfortable with the way that like how people act and like that the fact that people have uncertainties and that they have insecurities. I don't think there's anyone walking this earth who doesn't have insecurities. And I think a lot of us don't realize that. We're like, oh, the celebrities, like all of them so confident. They have everything. Like why, how could they be insecure? When you said it earlier, it's all relative. And yeah, that has been a huge lesson for me. And then the other thing is, which I talk about now when I do these speeches, there's this framework of conversation. It's called FORD. It stands for family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And it's just, I've learned that it applies to everyone. It doesn't matter what country they come from. It doesn't matter what background, but you have a family impact or a family dynamic that impacts who you are. You have an occupation that you do to make money and a path that led you to get there from education, high school, college, whatever. You have recreation that Sean is a person outside of hosting and whatnot, that you have these hobbies you enjoy, and you have dreams for yourself of who you want to be in the future. And so does everyone else. And I think sometimes people forget that about each other. But when you like talk to people day in and day out, 3 new people every day, an hour, it's drilled into your mind that everyone has these facets to their life. So that's a very simple thing, but something that I've come to understand and see apply to every single person I've talked to.
That's awesome. That is awesome, Rob. I'm so glad. You know, I feel blessed that I get to do this. Tough Mudder allowed me to host this podcast. Almost everybody I've spoken with so far, when I'm done, you just feel so good about life. And I feel like, you know, I'm ready to go and live and all that stuff. You're another one of those people, man. You're another one of those people. Thank you. I feel blessed to be talking to you. So thank you for this. And hey, what if I want to like have my Rob hour? Was this it?
I don't know what I would write about because we just talked about me the whole time. We'll have to set an hour together. And I'll hear your side of the story because I would be interested to hear all of those things about your life too.
Yeah. And I understand those people who have those insecurities, like, I'm not interesting, because I kind of, I get it, how they feel that way, because I feel like that that's my knee-jerk reaction when you say that. Okay, so Rob, now it's time for my fun questions for you, so I can let you get back to life and doing that wonderful thing you're doing with people in your life. These are questions that I ask everyone that I speak with on the podcast. One was a quote that was passed down to me by one of our Legionnaires, a gentleman named Craig. I got to visit Craig in the hospital just before he passed away of cancer a few years ago. And he told me when he was diagnosed that he started living by this quote that became a motto for him. It became a motto for me. And I took it back to Mudder Nation. And over the years, Mudder Nation made it so popular, it actually became a song by Darius Rucker. Now, the cool thing is that we had our 24-hour event. That's our big event at the end of the year. It was in Laughlin, California, just a few weeks ago from when you and I are talking now. And I don't know if it was cosmic or just one of those great things that happen in life that's beyond our knowledge. On that same day, that same weekend that we were having that big event, literally right across the street at the concert venue was Darius Rucker. And everybody at that event heard him sing that song that night. Now, I always ask like I said, the people that I talk to, this quote, I'm asking you now. When was the last time you did something for the first time?
So I'm going to give you two answers, which I feel like I'm going to cheat. Because the one is very boring.
No cheating.
The one was, I was thinking about this. I opened a business bank account, which is very boring, I know. But I tell it to talk about the fact that there's this whole other side that I've realized through this project of like, there's Rob meeting people and posting about them. There's Rob going out and doing speaking gigs. But behind all of that, it's like the iceberg kind of analogy. There's like the smallest part of it is above the water, and then the mass of it is underneath. And I've learned that about entrepreneurship, that there's like taxes, there's the bank account, there's like sending invoices and how do you get paid and how do you funnel this to that and this to that. And that for me has and continues to be like drinking from a fire hose. It was something that I guess I didn't really anticipate in going on this journey, but I just did it recently. I did it like last month, and I got an email this morning. It's like, activate your debit card, and it's all new to me. So I say that just to say, like, again, the depth of people and the depth of a project, that's been something that I did. But a more heartwarming thing, which goes back to July of 2020, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I'm the youngest of three. So I've never watched someone younger than me like grow up and progress. And I became an uncle in July of 2020 for the very first time. And that was a really cool experience. And I'm very lucky that I get to see my older siblings take steps in their lives before I have to do them. Like, I hope to be a father someday. But I watched my nephew like crawl for the first time. And I watched him walk for the first time. And he's so close to talking. And he was just sick and he got over it. And like, I'm paying attention to all these things of childhood that I never had to pay attention to before because everyone was paying attention to me. So I became an uncle for the first time in July of 2020. And throughout the entirety of the pandemic, that little boy has been such a blessing of like a happy distraction from everything else going on in the world. So really, really cool kid. His name is Andrew. So shout out Andrew when you listen to this in 20 years or whatever.
Yeah, Andrew, you are a very fortunate individual, man. You got born into a pretty cool family. Pretty awesome family. My final question to you, sir. Okay, you're out there living your life, doing whatever it is that you do, and you come across a lamp. You discover this lamp, wipe it off. Of course, out pops the genie. It's me. I've been in there for millions and billions of centuries. You finally freed me. I am so happy, man. I am not going to give you 3 wishes, but I'm going to give you the ultimate gift. I, in this moment, am going to give you the ears, eyes, the undivided attention of the world. In this moment, what do you say to the world?
I say to treat human connection as an experience rather than a transaction. That has been a huge driver of this project for me. And I think it's the reason why I could sit down with 4,700 different people and enjoy every single interaction with them. And it goes back to that expectations or that lack of expectations. But to treat it as an experience, because then you are present in that moment. What you get out of it is just what you experience in that time. You're not upset because it didn't lead to something down the road. You're not upset because it didn't go a certain way. And I think you probably carry that over into a bunch of different other parts of life, but within human connection, it allows you to see the beauty of it and some of those different aspects in that sense of belonging, that shift of perspective. So yes, treat human connection as an experience rather than a transaction, and you will start to see people in a much brighter way. And I think you're going to have a better life as a result of it.
Well said, sir. Hey, keep living this positive life that you're doing, man. It's awesome. You're a blessing to all of us. And thank you for this time hanging out with me here.
Thank you, Sean. Super, super enjoyed it. It was a pleasure. Happy to be the warm story in the holidays for other people.
Yes,
Yeah.
The perfect story in the holidays for other people. You can find Tough Mudder on Facebook and Twitter. That will be @Tough Mudder, or on Instagram, also @Tough Mudder. Please remember you can find this podcast, No Excuses, on wherever you listen to podcasts. Guys, subscribe. Let me know what you like, what you're not liking, and I will be including you as much as possible and even more in the future.
Inspirational.
Be inspired. Inspire.
No excuses.
Motivational.
Be motivated.
Motivate. No excuses.
No whining.
No quitting. Overcome.
No excuses.
Community. Teamwork.
Tough Mudder.
Tougher together.
No excuses.